So just understand that when you're scarce, it's harder to do sales in the right way. And what I mean by the right way is you find a compelling solution for the right person at the right time, at the right price, all of those things. Podcast Growth Nation, welcome back to another episode of Podcast Growth University, where we talk all things podcasting all the time. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. We talked about Google Podcasts and how it is now dead. What does that mean for you? I believe, I don't think you have to do anything special to get on YouTube Music. I went and looked, and we're already on YouTube Music, and I think that's because we have a podcast playlist like I was talking about in the previous episode. So make sure you go back and listen. But I'm 99% sure if you turn your podcast into a playlist on YouTube as a podcast, it'll then put you on YouTube Music. Just an FYI. Today, for episode number 95, the 5 steps to get really good at sales. The reason I wanted to do an episode on sales is because most likely, if you are someone who is going to take your podcast and really grow it into some level of business, you're most likely going to have to do some piece of sales. And if you're anything like me, at the beginning of this journey, I hated sales. I didn't think I was good at it. I thought it was sleazy. I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it. I wasn't interested in it. And this all starts for me from a time in my life where I was a personal trainer and I worked at a high-end facility where it wasn't a gym. It was a boutique-style fitness center where there was 3 rooms, and each personal trainer got their own room that you take your client into, and we had our own set of weights. We had everything we needed. Exercise balls, cables, everything. Everything we needed to train that client. And while I enjoyed being a personal trainer, one of the things I didn't enjoy was the sales tactics employed by the people that I was working for. So I think when I started, I was making like $23 an hour, and I was probably 21, 22 at the time. So for me, I was like, all right, this is cool. This is a really good opportunity for me to grow and to learn and evolve, and I can work my way up here. I love fitness. I've wanted to be a personal trainer. This is amazing. So when I signed up to work with this company, I had to sign a contract that said I was going to stay there for a year, or I'd have to pay $1,000 to leave, because training, quote unquote, is valued at $1,000. So the amount of training they were going to pour into me was valued at $1,000. I was probably like 3-4 months in, and I started to understand that I wasn't very good at sales. My bosses wanted me to use tactics that just weren't aligned for me. I'm not going to tell someone that they're not going to be around to see their grandkids if they're like 10 pounds overweight. That's not real. It's not what I want to do. So I actually, because of my lack of sales, I think I got a pay cut. I went from like $23 an hour. I think they brought me down to like 18. So I lost $5 an hour because they said, look, you're not doing any sales. We have to pay you less. All right, cool. It was in that moment where I decided I wasn't going to do this job anymore. So I quite literally wrote a check for $1,000, gave it to them, and quit that job because I was convinced that I couldn't do sales. I didn't like sales. It was sleazy. It makes people feel bad. You have to manipulate people. I don't want to do that. So I ended up going in and getting another job, $1,000 poorer than I was at the time. If you fast forward, whatever it is you want to say, I had a client back when I was doing more mindset coaching. I guess it was a little bit of business coaching, but mostly mindset. And this client of mine said, look, I have an opportunity to get a job as a salesperson at a car dealership. What advice would you give me on sales? And at this point, I had been podcasting for a couple years. I had maybe gotten a couple clients, but I was starting to understand sales at a deeper level. And I said, honestly, a couple things. 1, be yourself. 2, actually try to solve your customers' problems. And number 3, do what's best for them, not what's best for you. And this person, the first year in sales, they had a 6-figure year. They made over $100,000. Now, again, does that have anything to do with what I said? I like to think it helped, but this is a very beautiful human who is really good with people, and she did really well. But I think those are some good fundamentals. So let's get into 5 steps. The 5 steps to getting really good at sales. And I'll make sure I touch on other things in the 5 steps. This will probably be a little bit of a longer episode. I'm super excited to do this, believe it or not. If you told me that 5 years ago, you're going to love doing a podcast episode on a podcast about podcasts that's about sales, I never would have believed you. But I'll try to kind of touch on different stuff as we go through. Number one thing I want to say before we even get into the steps, just replace sales with help. If you have a negative relationship with sales because you've been sold to by someone who is sleazy or you got taken advantage of, all a sale is a transfer of something for something. It could be a transfer of goods for money. It could be a transfer of energy for enthusiasm. It could be many, many, many different things. So just think of it as that. It's help. You're helping. If you have something that it can help someone, that's all you're doing. It's just about getting them to say yes to the opportunity to help them. So get rid of sales if that's a word you don't resonate with, and replace it with something you do. Help. Impact. Create opportunity for. Whatever the phrasing that resonates most with you, replace that. Or replace sales with that. All right, cool. Number 1, get exposure. What does that mean? Get exposure means you put yourself out there and you capture the eyes of people who don't know you, like you, or trust you yet. This is one of the reasons so many people want to go on other podcasts. Because by definition, if you come on our podcast and your episode gets 1,000 views, you have exposure to 1,000 people who might not know you, like you, or trust you yet. This is something that people, I think they underestimate how challenging this one is. And how you have to get way more exposure than you think in order to actually facilitate a sale. So again, this isn't to brag, this is just for data purposes. I've been on like 800 podcasts. 800 podcasts, let's just say the average podcast that I was on got 50 views. 800 times 50, what is that? 40,000? So 40,000. Let's say 40,000 eyes. How many clients did we get from that? How many people came and watched our podcast? How many people joined our Facebook group? It's probably less than you think. Just to put it that way. It's a lot of exposure. But that's only step 1. And understanding that exposure is probably, it doesn't convert at the level you most likely think it does. And that's okay. I want to just put it all out there and be as honest and upfront about that because I want your expectations to be accurate. So number 1 is get exposure. For you as a podcaster, that could be putting up a billboard. And again, I'm going to give you a bunch of examples. Many of them you might not do. A billboard, that's exposure. A commercial, that's exposure. A radio ad, that's exposure. A Facebook ad, an Instagram ad, a LinkedIn ad, being on somebody else's show. A book is exposure if people buy your book. A blog is an exposure. YouTube channel, podcast is exposure. Being on other people's podcasts, being a speaker and being on stage, that is all exposure. Anything that is going to introduce you to a new audience is exposure. That's step number 1. And that's why a lot of people create a podcast. A lot of people think, well, and you've probably heard this, podcast is free marketing. A lot of people say that. It's free marketing. Yes, to a degree. It creates the opportunity for you to get exposure to an audience that doesn't know you, like you, or trust you yet. But it's probably not to the degree you think when you first start. So that's number 1. Get exposure. We need to create a bunch of opportunity. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, make a meaningful connection. Meaningful being the key word. So this is a really good example. I went on a podcast one time and somebody reached out to me and messaged me. They messaged me and said, "Hey, my buddy heard you on this podcast and told me I had to listen because I'd resonate with you. I just listened to it and you seem like a really good dude and I'm really glad I listened." I sent this person either an audio message or a video message back saying thank you, and that person actually ended up starting a podcast with us. A meaningful connection is something different. It's not just double tapping a message that somebody sends you. It's not just saying thank you. A meaningful connection goes above and beyond, so the other person is ultimately going to remember you. Meaningful. This is why you've heard me say before, scale the unscalable. Is it doable for me to send audio messages and video messages forever to people? Hopefully not. Right? Eventually, whatever social media we're using in 10 years, I'm hoping that I have a big enough following where I don't have time to do that. But that would make it extra meaningful. Whoever your favorite actor or actress or musician is, if they sent you a video DM, that would be a very meaningful connection. And that's something you may never forget. Now, again, I don't know if I'm anybody's favorite anything, but just as an example. So that's number 2. Make a meaningful connection. It's something different. You don't know what other people are getting in terms of attention. So if you can do something different that helps somebody remember you and makes them feel cared about, awesome. So that's number 2. Number 3, build a real relationship. Okay, this is where things can get wonky. A real relationship doesn't mean you only reach out to someone when you are selling something. Have you ever been pitched by someone on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or via email for something you have no interest in and you don't know who this person is? Because you don't have a real relationship yet. That's really the problem. Somebody who has a real relationship with you can ask you, can tell you things that other people can't. So a real relationship takes time. This is why it is a sales cycle. I've had many clients who come to me and say, "Hey, I need to get sales now." You're already in trouble because if you're not doing all the other things, you don't have it set up where you have the momentum of sales yet. And one thing we cannot do, or we struggle to do, is collapse time when it comes to relationship building. Some people are not interested ever in an ad that they see. I don't know if I've ever seen a Facebook ad where I said, "Oh, I need that," and I clicked. There's no relationship yet. This is the beauty of having a podcast and then having a Facebook group and then working your way down, because what you're really doing is building a real relationship with that person where they get to see you behind the scenes, where they get to know you. This is why having 20 minutes a day where you're talking to people on social media is so important, because you're building a real relationship. Real is the key word here. And you're going to notice there are key words here. Honestly, it probably should be get aligned exposure. Not just exposure, get aligned exposure. Exposure with people that actually care about what you do. You can, if you're a dog breeder and you go to a equestrian show, that's a horse show, you're not necessarily as aligned as if you went to a dog show, just as an example. Meaningful connection. It's got to be meaningful. Real relationship, not shallow, not surface level, not salesy. You genuinely want to talk to this person. I have so many conversations going on with people. I'll be very honest. Many of them are going on because I want to know more about what's going on in the person's life. But there is also another piece of me that's always running this system. And let me tell you, most of these people will never, ever, ever be clients, but it's just a habit. It's a habit for me to talk to people throughout the day because that's been one of the most instrumental things in our business. And I know that some people like that. I remember what it was like when I would get a DM and it made my day because nobody else was DMing me. So if I can help someone through the day by having a cool conversation with them, whether they end up a client or not, I don't care. I'm happy to have a conversation, right? Especially if it's somebody in your community who listens to your podcast. That's a +1+1+1. So just as a habit, for your podcast growth, it's super important. For sales, it's super important. But see, this is where things can get a little scary because you just heard me say that and you might have said, "Well, Kev, that sounds That sounds bad. It sounds like you're only doing it for that reason. That's not true. That's not true. I'm doing it because I know how important that is for everything. How important it is for the Facebook group, how important it is for my social media, how important it is for everything. And it's meaningful, and it's real, and that's what we've built our business on. That's all being said with the fact that I don't care if this person never becomes a client. As an example, I was talking to somebody the other day through DMs, and we have a real relationship. I was on their podcast. I check in on them every once in a while, see how they're doing, see if I can add value in any way. And they said, right now, I don't have the funds to work together. They basically asked what we do and how much we charge. And I said, yeah, this is what we do. This is how much we charge. And I said, no worries. No hurry, no worries. Let me know if that's something you might want to do in the future. And they said, right now I can't do it, but I'd love to do it in the future. And I said, yeah, you're good. No worries. No worries. I'm still here. If you have any questions, I'm always a message away. And just because we're not working together doesn't mean I won't talk to you. I'm all for it. I don't care if this person ever becomes a client. I would like them to. It'd be awesome if they did, but just because they don't doesn't mean I'm not going to have a real relationship with them. And I think that's the biggest differentiator. That's the important piece, is you're building real relationships, not just for the sake of sales, because it helps everything else. So that's number 3. Number 4, offer a compelling solution. This is one where you either have it or you don't. What does that mean? What does it mean to have a compelling solution? A compelling solution is something that is blatantly obvious that it will solve the problems of the person you're talking to. So again, I'm a podcast coach. I have a podcast production company. When I go on podcasts, oftentimes people will say, right now I'm struggling with audio production and video production. I just don't have the time to do it. And I have people who want to pay me money to coach them, but I don't have time to do it. Oh, we have solutions and we have a production company that can take all that off your plate so you can actually go make money right now. Compelling. That's very compelling. Why would you not want to do that? A compelling solution is a solution that is so good that somebody would feel stupid to say no. There is a company out there that offers free water. The water is totally free. The way they make money is by having ads on their water bottles. And I don't know what the name of the company is, but do you want to talk about a compelling solution? Imagine if a really good thing for them, a really good marketing strategy for them, would be to go to a marathon and sponsor the marathon and be the water that the marathon uses, and it would be totally free. Wouldn't cost them anything. It's a very compelling solution. The compelling solution is we need a bunch of water. Who's going to do it? What vendor are we going to have come in that's going to provide the water? Oh, the free water company. It's free. It's not going to cost us anything. Awesome. And the free water company, that's a great opportunity for marketing. It's going to look really good on social media. So a compelling solution is a solution that your ideal customer cannot say no to because it just wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't make sense for them to say no to that. A compelling solution would be something like when you go to rent a car, if the extra insurance was only $5 versus all this wonky other stuff that gets lost in translation and it's all in the fine print. The reason a lot of people turn down insurance is because it's not a compelling solution to a problem that I don't have yet. But compelling is the key word there. All right, and then number 5 can be a challenge. Meaningful follow-up. So let's say you start your podcast and you're doing your podcast. Awesome. Boom, 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 boom. You get exposure to people that don't know you yet. You see Kevin. Kevin watches every story you do. Kevin is signed up to your email list. Kevin is in your Facebook group. Kevin seems like he's someone who is really interested in your podcast. I'm going to reach out to Kevin. Hey, I'm going to send Kevin a video. Hey, Kevin, thank you so much for being part of the community. I value it and appreciate it so very much. If there's ever anything you need help with, just let me know. I'm always just a message away. That is a meaningful connection. Kevin doesn't get messages like that very often, so it's different. He's going to remember that. And then over the next month, 2 months, 6 months, year, I build a real relationship with Kevin. Kevin's name goes on a list somewhere, And every 20 days, every month, every 3 weeks, whatever it is you decide, I follow up with Kevin and check in and see how Kevin's doing. We're building a real relationship. I know that Kevin has 2 kids. Kevin does this for work. Kevin lives here. This are a lot of the problems Kevin's dealing with. The more you do it, the more it starts to make sense and the easier that cycle becomes. All right, so now we have a real relationship. Cool. This is where things can get wonky because you might have a relationship with someone, but they don't come to you with their problems. So this is where it's our job to go find people and through our conversations get to the place where people reveal their problems because they trust us. And then we can say, oh, are you struggling with blank? Oh, that's something I can actually help you with. In the very beginning, when we were trying to get clients and I was very broke, very much in debt, and I had no idea what I was doing, so this is the way it worked. People would reach out to us via social media based on the exposure. So we got exposure. We would have conversations with them, genuine conversations. I want to know, what do you like about the podcast? What don't you like? What's going on in your life? What's valuable? What's not? Made a meaningful connection and built a real relationship. When it was time to start coaching, I would reach out to them. And do you want to talk about a compelling solution? This is the one. I would reach out to them and say, hey, have you ever been interested in coaching? Obviously, you listen to the podcast and you're into self-improvement. And again, fill in the blanks for you. It's going to be different. But I am looking to coach 5 people. It's totally free for 2 months. At the end of the 2 months, if you want to sign up, awesome. If not, no worries. I get experience. You get value. It's the best of both worlds. The reason that's a compelling solution, based on where I was at the time, is because it was free. A compelling solution is a solution so good that people don't want to say no. Who's going to say no to free coaching? Especially someone you have a real authentic relationship with and they listen to you. They listen to you every week or every 3 days or however often you produce episodes. And then there really wasn't a need for the meaningful follow-up. The meaningful follow-up is, I sent you over the compelling solution. It doesn't seem like you're interested / and even that I know can be a scary thing that I just said, but let's just / you haven't made a decision yet. Let me follow up. That can mean any number of things. What I try to do at the beginning of the year is I try to go through the list of podcasts I've been on, and I might shoot someone a message and just say, hey, Kev, Happy New Year, long time no talk, how's everything going? That's a follow-up. I don't always address the fact that, hey, I remember we had a conversation about blank, are you still interested? Doesn't necessarily go that way. What I might do is a meaningful follow-up for me might be, hey, Kevin, we talked a couple weeks ago. I didn't want you to think I forgot about you. I know things get busy. Are there any questions I can answer to bring more certainty to you? That's something I say because I genuinely want to know, is there anything I can do to bring more certainty to you? That's a meaningful follow-up instead of, hey, checking in, do you want to purchase this? Because it really is. It's all about the relationship.
Next Level University and Kevin is exactly where you need to be if you're a podcaster. When I first started out just a few months ago, I had no clue on the direction I was going. I was getting hustled by another company that was giving me not even close to the value that Kevin and Next Level U was giving me. They literally changed the trajectory of my podcast, have helped me out tremendously. They understand the clients. I promise you, you will not go wrong with dealing with Kevin and Next Level U. I'll see you there.
The one thing that I think makes sales, quote unquote, really challenging is a lot of the people teaching sales are teaching sales from the perspective of somebody who is very logical and not emotional. And most humans are emotional. The vast majority of humans are emotional. It's different when you're in sales and you're selling to other people who are in sales and you can just call them up and say, hey, Kev, how much are you paying for blank? Because we can do it for blank. That's different. That's different. And depending on who your audience is, you might be working with or speaking to emotionally driven people. So sales is different. It's not it's not just sales. You don't just call somebody up and ask. You have to run the whole thing. You have to build a relationship. But that's an example of how I would do it. So, okay, think of it this way. I go on a podcast. Somebody reaches out and says, hey, I've been thinking of starting a podcast. What do I do? The meaningful connection for me is usually I'll hop on a free call with them. Whether they have a podcast already, whether they think they might want to start one, I will make a meaningful connection. And depending on how it goes, sometimes I will offer our services. Sometimes people ask about our services. Other times I just build a relationship with them. And I'll follow them on social media and we just have conversations. And then in time, I'll check in. And sometimes people say, yeah, things haven't been going well. I don't know if I want to do it anymore. And then I'll offer a compelling solution. Oh, okay, well, if you need help with this, and this is what we do. This is how much it is. Might be something you're interested in. If not, no worries. Some people say, yeah, that's something I'm looking for. Other people say, no, not right now. Or, nope, that's not for me. I'm going to do it myself. Totally fine. Some people say check in later, and then that's when we'll do the meaningful follow-up. The problem arises, and it happens to everyone. The problem arises when you go through the sales cycle and you get 10 clients or whatever it is, and then you stop the sales cycle, and then you think you're going to continue getting clients at that rate. It doesn't work that way. There is a lag between when you get exposure and when you offer the compelling solution and do the meaningful follow-up. There's a lag depending on the audience. Now, again, if you get a referral, I've gotten referrals that I get connected. We do a podcast breakthrough session. They send me money that day. That happens too. The biggest reason that happens is because the real relationship is borrowed from the person that gives the referral and the solution is so compelling that it just makes sense. You can get a lot done if you have a really compelling solution. You can get a lot done if you have a really compelling solution. There was a gentleman, Abdullah, who messaged me. He emailed me. And I get a lot of emails for stuff like this, but this actually worked. And this was really good sales. He emailed me and said, hey, I do thumbnails for YouTube videos. I created a bunch for you. I just wanted you to see what they would look like. This is my pricing. If that's something you're interested in, I'd love to work together. The fact that, so he offered a compelling solution by creating thumbnails without charging us. He just said, these are yours regardless of whether we work together or not. This is an example of what I can do. That caught my eye. He just did it. He didn't ask if he could do it. He just did it. And I was very, very grateful for that. I appreciated that very much. We ended up bringing him on the team. So he made a sale that day, a big sale, because now he has a lot more opportunity. He didn't get exposure. He made a meaningful connection. We didn't have a real relationship, but he offered a compelling solution. You can really get by with a compelling solution. If you've ever been hiking somewhere and there's a bubbler, they could charge for that water for sure. If you've ever been, I don't know what a good example of this is. Oh, okay. If you've ever gone to a mountain to ski or snowboard and you forget your helmet, you forget your goggles, you forget your gloves, it's a compelling solution for them to have those there regardless of the price. I forgot my goggles when I went snowboarding with my wife, and I paid way more than I should have for goggles because I didn't have any. It was a very compelling solution. I needed it. So that's the 5 steps. Maybe it sounds overly simple. I don't know, because I've been practicing this for a long time, and Alan's really the one who helped me understand these. But the key is you can't ever stop. You can't ever stop, because when you stop, you lose the momentum. Even if we use fitness as an analogy, track your calories, get enough sleep, drink enough water, exercise every day, like do foam rolling and mobility. You can do those and then you start to get results. But the problem is if you stop doing those things, things start to pop up. Oh, my shoulder's been bothering me. Oh, I somehow gained weight. I don't know how, right? I feel like I'm getting weaker. When you don't do the things that got you to the dance, you don't get to dance anymore. And this is why it's so hard when I start working with someone who is not doing this, because it takes a long time to get this rolling. If you have no way to get exposure, we have to start there, right? We have to start there. So a couple takeaways that I would give with this. And again, like I said, this will be a longer episode, but I'm very excited about this one because I think there's so much value in just understanding that you're not alone if you're afraid of sales. You're not alone if you don't have anywhere or any idea where to start. And it's probably not as complicated as it seems, or it's not as complicated. It's not as simple as it needs to be the way a lot of people say it. A lot of people make it seem super complex when it doesn't have to be. So a couple takeaways. One, lists are your friend. So if you can formulate, I don't know why I used formulate, if you can form a list of all the people that you know are in your community, that's a great place to start. And when I say your community, I mean people who could be potential clients for whatever it is you're going to do, or potential customers, right? If you have merchandise, that's still sales. It's still sales. The compelling solution is the merchandise, but it's still sales. Having a list of all the people. Why? So one of the reasons when you download something or you purchase something, you get put on an email list, there's a reason, because they want to know who the people are. And then they can hopefully make a meaningful connection and then offer a compelling solution. I'm convinced over the next 10 years, email marketing is going to die more because there's going to be less meaningful connection and less real relationship. That's what I'm convinced of. What you're seeing right now often on social media is people who have a large audience, they have a lot of exposure. They'll say, comment blank below and I'll give you this free training, right? So they're kind of leveraging the fact that they already have a meaningful connection or relationship with a person because they follow them by offering them a compelling solution. Usually it's free. At the end of that freebie, I guarantee they have some sort of potential for money. Thank you so much for downloading this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did find value in this, we actually have a $17 product that has 250 of these prompts, right? Hypothetically. But it really is getting to the point where you have a real relationship with someone and then they say yes. They say yes to something, and in theory, it's easier to get someone to say yes to something else when they've already said yes to one thing. But lists are your friend. Have a list of all the people in your community, these potential clients, because it's just far easier to be organized that way. That's one thing. The second thing that I would say that's helped me a lot, and again, easier said than done, don't understand that it's really hard to do sales when you're scarce. So all I mean by that is when you don't have any clients and you need one client, you're not able to run the system the way you should. You're not able to build a real relationship, to add value for long enough, and you might do the offer a compelling solution ask too soon. And you might not have the level of relationship needed. That's happened to me a lot in the past. When I was first getting rolling and I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have any money and I needed to get clients, there were times where I would try to get a sale when it wasn't time yet. It just wasn't time. I should have taken more time. I should have slow played it more. But it's really hard when you're scarce. When you have 100 clients or you have 50-something clients like we do, I have plenty of time to wait to build real, authentic relationships. I'm talking to people right now I've been talking to for 2 years, and they're still not working with us yet. It's okay. I don't care if they ever do, because there's plenty of people that are. But that's the thing, that abundance creates opportunity and it creates length. It creates time. It creates patience. So just understand that when you're scarce, it's harder to do sales in the right way. And what I mean by the right way is you find a compelling solution for the right person at the right time, at the right price, all of those things. So there's a lot that goes into sales, but these are the 5 steps you really need to start with, because once you get rolling, things get a little bit easier, especially when you start having conversations about sales. I remember one of the first times I ever discussed money, the pricing on one of the things we had. I was talking to someone who I met at an event. This is a really good flow here. Exposure. I met them at an event that we both attended. Meaningful connection. We were friends with this person. We met them at the event. We hung out with them at the event. Meaningful connection. Build a real relationship. I talked to them when we got home. They reached out to me, interested in podcasting. I offered them a compelling solution. We do that. And they said, I'm going to be the easiest sale you've gotten all day. How much is it? And I said, for what you're looking for, it's X amount. And at the time, what they were looking for was $797 a month. And when I said that, they said, whoa, that's more than I expected. And that was the first time I had ever experienced that discomfort of that happening live in front of someone. And since then, we've lowered our prices and changed things because that was really good feedback. And again, in the beginning, you don't really know what you're doing. But that person ended up becoming a client later. Awesome. After meaningful follow-up. So that's a really good example of that happening. The problem is I was very scarce at the time. I needed that client. So I had to do everything. I was anxious. I was nervous. It's hard when it's the first one. But if you're doing the system right, you should have more than one opportunity flowing at a time. So that's another thing I would add. Let me see. One of the things that's been super helpful for me is if you have a product or service, people aren't rejecting you, they're rejecting the product or service. That's helped me a lot. I mean, maybe they are rejecting you, but it feels better if you say it's the product or service because you don't have to take it personally. The other thing that has been very surprising to me, honestly, people tend to work with who they like. I have had people who I think they just worked with us because they like me, because they didn't ask enough information to know what was happening. I've had some people say, oh, I get all that. I didn't even realize that. I don't know, I liked you and I wanted to work with you. So if you're somebody who's very likable, that helps. And again, I don't know if I would consider myself likable. I like to think I am. But it's based on the fact that I went through all these steps and I just want to be friends with this person more than anything and then see what happens. So that's another thing. Be yourself. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. Don't pretend you have to say all the right words. And I don't like any of that stuff. I don't like, oh, this is a limited time offer. I don't like injecting scarcity. I don't like that. I think the best way to do sales is just to be yourself and genuinely try to help the person as much as you can. I was looking back to one of the first clients I ever got, and I have the message saved. It was something along the lines of, this is what I do in coaching. If it's ever something you're interested in, I'd love to work together, but no pressure and take your time. A lot of people are against that. They say, don't do that. Don't let someone leave and think about it. I would rather them leave and think about it. I would rather somebody not work with me than work with me and regret it. Because I think the way a relationship ends is just as important as the way it begins. So that's another thing, that some people shouldn't be clients. Some people just shouldn't be. Even if you're really good at sales, just because they become clients doesn't mean they're going to stay clients. Or just because they buy something of yours doesn't mean they actually wanted it and they're going to leave a positive review. That's another important thing. All right, last thing, because I feel like this episode could get really long. A very important understanding that I had, I won't say early on, but fairly early on. If you were to think of 100 potential clients in a room, 25% of those clients, so 25 of those people, are never going to buy from you. 25 of those people will buy when something changes in their life. 25% of those people will buy if something specific happens, and 25 of those people will buy right now. Some people are just not going to be clients. And that has helped me tremendously understand that just some people aren't going to. Some people aren't supposed to. If I beat myself up over, oh, that person didn't get back to me, that person didn't get back to me, some people just aren't supposed to. If you just think of the numbers. If you do this long enough, you're going to get rejected, for lack of better phrasing. But honestly, the rejection isn't nearly as personal as I thought it was, because usually it's just people ghosting you. Usually it's people that just aren't answering you. That's the way that they reject, and that's cool. I understand. I'd much rather that, honestly, in the beginning than somebody saying, hey, I looked at it. I don't think it's worth it. But out of all the messages I've gotten that were no's, 99% of them were not negative at all. Most of them were very, very, very positive. So that's another thing to take away. Rejection is part of it, but work your way up on rejection. Don't go out and try to get rejected a million times. Just put yourself out there a little bit and see how it feels. Put yourself out there a little bit and see how it feels. But understand that if you get rejected, it's probably not you. It's probably the product or the service. And even if it is you, it feels better to say it's the product or the service. I think that's probably where I would end. This is one of those things that you just got to keep doing. Because when you stop doing it, you stop getting results. But it's delayed. It's delayed. Last year, I went on, I don't know how many probably like 400, at least 400 podcasts last year, I think. And our third quarter of the year, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, we got 19 clients. So in 12 weeks, we got 19 clients, which means we were getting a client and a half almost every week. But it wasn't necessarily what I did then. It was what I did at the beginning of the year and throughout the year. So it just takes time to add up. It takes time. You can diet and exercise and do all that right now. You're not going to see any results for a couple weeks, a month, a couple months, right? So you got to trust what you're doing and just try to get a little bit better at it. A little bit better. A little bit better. How do I get a little bit better? How do I make my messages a little bit better? How do I make my packages a little bit better? All right, just improving as you go. And then last thing, one of the best ways to truly be in control of your success and your income as a podcaster, as a business owner, is to practice and understand sales. Because at the end of the day, if I want you to come to a movie with me, I have to practice sales. I have to influence you. If I know you like insert actor, Margot Robbie. Hey, I was thinking of going to the movies. There's a couple I kind of wanted to see, but I don't know. I kind of want to see the one with Margot Robbie in it. Is that something you might be interested in? Of course you're interested. You love Margot Robbie. Cool. Where if it's a zombie movie and you hate zombie movies, it's probably not going to work. I'm probably not going to be able to influence you that way. We're practicing this more than we know. If you have kids and you're trying to get them to go to bed on time, that's influence. And I don't have kids, so I can't claim to know what that's like. But that's influence. Sales is the same thing. That's a compelling solution. I want someone to go to the movies and see this movie with me. Who do I know that likes this movie? Kev. Kev loves Margot Robbie. That's a compelling solution. If he wants to go to the movies, he's going to want to see that one for sure. If you have any questions on this, or I left anything out, or I wasn't super clear, just reach out. I love talking about stuff like this. The last thing, because I don't want to go. The big thing, just be yourself. You don't have to pretend to be anybody you're not. I know that's the content that goes really well on social media and people, the top sales trainers. Don't worry too much about that in the beginning. Be yourself and try to solve the person's problem, and you'll go pretty far. Phil M. Jones is a guest that we had on our podcast a while ago. I think we had him on a couple times. He has really good books on sales. Very aligned. He's very character-driven. I've read most of his books, and they're all really, really good. So that's a great place to start. He has magic words, exactly what to say, exactly what to sell. He's got a bunch of really good books, exactly how to sell, He's got a really good bunch of books that will help tremendously on this, and they're not sleazy stuff. They're not that stuff that triggers you. It's not that. It's really, really, really good. All right, I will let you go and get back to your regularly scheduled programming. If you need any help with this, my link will be in the show notes, as always, for a free podcast breakthrough session. We can go over any of this. With some clients, I literally am in their DMs with them, helping them figure out what to say to move certain conversations along. Might sound weird. I love that. It's always super fun for me. So if that's something you need help with, let's do a free podcast breakthrough session. We can talk about anything on that. Next week, for episode number 96, we are creeping up. My laptop has frozen. and I can't move my mouse down. I think we're going to do... here we go. Hold on. Oh, why you shouldn't quit your job to podcast yet. I know my story sounds really cool. I left my job and I became a full-time podcaster. That part sounds really cool. The being broke for 2 years is not cool. So let's talk about that. Let's have an open and honest dialogue about that. It sounds sexy. Yeah, it makes for really good content. My story's awesome when I tell my story on other people's podcasts, but that's not the path that everybody should take. Is that the path you should take? I don't know. We'll talk about that next week. As always, I hope you are crushing it. I hope you feel more comfortable about sales after this episode. Maybe you can reframe it a little bit. It's not sales, it's help. And I hope your podcast is doing what you want it to do, because I know what it feels like when it's not. Until next week, keep on crushing it. Keep on podcasting. I appreciate you all very, very much, and I will talk to you then.